Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is okay. Hope everyone is well. Wow, my head's a bit shiny today. It is pretty warm in here. So thanks again for joining in another Avenger call on Tuesday evening. Bit of a sidetrack. I had to have a Zoom call earlier on today. And I don't know if the OGs in here really remember that the reason we moved over to YouTube, for some random reason, whenever I had a Zoom call, my screen would just flicker. And I haven't done a Zoom call for ages that I host, not when I sort of join on one. And it happened again. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought this thing would be over by now. But sadly, not. That being said, today has been a pretty good day, so we can forgive any issues that I'm having with Zoom, as cryptocurrency still seems to be progressing very well at the moment. Obviously, we're going to go through where things have gone, what that might mean going forward. Don't really have too much news to cover at all. Just a couple of generic stories, well, not even generic, but small stories to kind of go through. Want to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to actually then talk quite a bit about Ethereum, which I think it deserves its place now. I mean, I've been bad-mouthing Ethereum for quite a few months. We're starting to see that turn around, and it's really a case of just reinforcing right now where's he sitting within this cycle, within alt season cycle. So we're going to focus on that. We'll have a look at the rest of the tokens, but I don't think this one's going to take too long, no more than an hour. I will try and promise that. So let's just dive straight in. The standard charts here, we can see Bitcoin. So on the 3-day time frame, I mean, we've got a day and a half to go, but what I would say when we look in the detail later on, I really want to see Bitcoin take the all-time high. And if not the all-time high, then this one below it. And the reason for that really is simply what we don't want to leave ourselves with is on a higher time frame, some sort of double top pattern that may ultimately lead towards playing out. Now, we had that push back down a couple of weeks ago, and then what we found over the weekend, or back in the last week, over the weekend, we've just moved straight into that 118,000 range, which for those of you on the call or saw the call on Friday, we're talking about that point of control where a lot of the buys and sells were. Previously, we've gone through that, and then we've had another attempt at the all-time high yesterday. We didn't quite get it. We've come back down. We had a bit of messing around today. Some good news with the CPI, which we'll go through later on, and Bitcoin and altcoins have seen a move up from that. But in just the bigger picture, with the right side of that this northern line here, the 118,000, we're still above this yellow trend line, which goes all the way back to April. And we don't have any EMAs on here, but if we did have the EMAs on, we're looking out for the 50 on the weekly. We're miles away from that one. So generally, sentiment's looking good. You look at this chart and you think we're quite happy with where things are going. There's moves up, there's consolidations, there's moves back down to areas of support, which, we want for a healthy kind of move back up. We move up again, we range, we repeat the cycle. We can live with that. So Bitcoin's looking pretty good. Bitcoin dominance, I say on the other hand, Bitcoin dominance is in that weird kind of position, and it's just struggling at the moment for me to break through this trend line. I've just put it on the big screen so you can. Well, this goes all the way back to, December 2022, and okay, it doesn't have that many touch points, but it's come back down, and where we're resting at the moment is on this trend line, and this is what I'm talking about with where is Ethereum going to go? Can we actually see that break? Can we see Ethereum make that move up, leave Bitcoin behind, we lose more of the dominance, and we can really start thinking about an alt season there? And right now, yes, okay, I might have missed 2 to 3% in this move down, but unless we break this line, and it is a multi-year trend line, I'm just sort of sitting on my hands. There's no point me reacting now, converting Bitcoin into any altcoin whilst we're here, because it could just change. And so what I want to see is a breakthrough. This is a 3-day time frame as well. So we've got a couple of candles, maybe a week or two, for us to really see a good move and a consolidation through from that. And just over the last week, we're just kind of struggling to get there. So just have to wait and see on that one. What I am liking is the total 2 market. And we're now starting to challenge the $1.6 trillion level that we achieved right after the Trump pump, end of November, beginning of December. Now, the vast majority of this move is actually being made up from Ethereum's gains, which again, no real problem with that. That's why we use Total 2 to start off with. Total 3 is still being a bit sluggish, but when we look at sort of cycle behavior, then that's to be expected at this stage within the cycle, and altcoins can certainly make their move later on. 1.6 trillion. Again, we're just under it. So it's like, why make a bold sweeping decision right now? We might as well see if we can take that previous high. I actually think it might be an all-time high. No, it's not. All-time high sits at 1.7. So yeah, this local high. And then once we've made that, we can then make a decision from it. So just taking a bit of time now. Honestly, in crypto, you don't really need to rush into things. I know sometimes it feels like we do, but let's just sit on our hands. Most of us have been in good positions for some time now, and we can just afford ourselves that flexibility to just let the charts tell us where things are going from there. If we look at total 3 on this chart here, it has had that move up. We have seen over the last 2 weeks another good move, but we're not really near where we were in December. We're currently floating around about 1.05 trillion. And we need to get to around about 1.15. So there's another 100 billion there to find. Sounds easy, but you'll be surprised how sticky that can be. And again, we're just sort of nursing in and around that 1.5 area. It has been a point of resistance in the past. So let's just wait to see how that move ultimately plays out. Then we get into BitTensor. BitTensor chart, I do apologize. I said this on Friday. It's starting to look a little bit messy now just because I was looking at sort of trying to chart a little bit better. Let me just get rid of this yellow line here for now and this one here. And let's just focus on the white support and resistance lines that we've used for months now. And again, okay, we've ever so slightly dipped below, but we are, using this lower support line as a support, as you'd expect, and we're managing to bounce from that. And so far, again, day and a half with the candle to go, we've made a good clean bounce from that one. What I'm hoping for is that move up. We'll look at BitTensor later, but there's sort of a region around 430, which I think is quite clear to take, and then a move up, and we'll just see how we're going to interact then in and around 480. That's what I'd like to see. Clearing a 480 is going to mean that, one, we break this trend line, but two, most importantly, we break this sort of high here, and then we can start talking about reversals. Because at the moment, sadly for BitTensor, and it is the same for quite a few altcoins, we're just making lower highs every time, and we're just sort of running out of steam. There's still moves to be had. There's still money to be made on these moves up, but we just need to actually start converting some of these into higher highs. But we'll get into that one a little bit later on. If anyone's got any questions, I didn't get any asked, apart from just some price ones, which we'll go through a bit later on in the chat or on the spreadsheet. So we'll just rattle through these. And I think this is probably a news article, which I don't think it's got anything to do with the price of crypto. So, don't necessarily worry about it too much. But I think it's just, a good litmus test of where we sit for the vast majority of us based in the United Kingdom, of how the UK feels about cryptocurrency. And the sad truth behind it is that we are not striving forward with the vast majority of the world. We are falling behind. And so what happens, I don't know if any of you have seen this, but Coinbase released a TV advert a week and a half ago, I think, which basically just, it was a bunch of people singing about how miserable their lives are in Britain with the cost of everything going up, with, rubbish in the streets, taxes, rich people leaving, etc. Quite a dig, I suppose, at sort of the current policies of this government. But, at the same time, just a bit of tongue in cheek. And for whatever reason, the TV Advertising Standards Agency, not the government, decided that it would be banned. You can't be seen. You can still watch it on YouTube. For those of you that haven't seen it, this is what it kind of looks like. I went onto the uninformed investors, but you just type in Coinbase banned in the UK, you'll find it's 2 minutes long. It's quite amusing. But I think this just shows exactly where we are with ourselves with crypto. For some reason, the UK government hasn't joined the United States in their sort of open-armed approach towards crypto with their new, with Trump in power, and other nations around there. And we still have very much a case of just, we are being held back. We know dealing with crypto transfers or funds from your bank to a crypto exchange is like the Spanish Inquisition. We know, and I don't have a problem necessarily with the HMRC speaking with exchanges to try and get that data to make sure that we are paying the right amount of taxes. And we still don't have very much clarity in and around that. Not that many nations do. But, it just, for me, is just another way of them, like, just trying to just hold on to their current broken system, the fiat system, for as long as possible. You know, Coinbase is, oh, not Coinbase, crypto is a bad thing. You know, it's still used for criminals is the narrative. It's bad for the environment is the narrative. It's risky is the narrative. You know, no one ever really talks about, you know, just leaving your money in the bank and inflation just being some form of tax that's just going to erode that over time. And it's just, yeah. So, yes, this was banned. It was newsworthy because they banned it, which seemed a little extreme. I think a lot of people thought it was a government that banned it. I don't think they really have the authority to do that, although, you know, I'm not going to put my tinfoil hat on where their reach can go. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. I was going to play it. It's 2 minutes long. I'm not going to bother wasting all your time. Like I say, it's quite amusing. And if you do watch it, just have a look for like the names of the shops and all that in the background, or just how everything in the high street is to let because they've had to close them down, etc. Anyway, the other thing that I was just interested in, I talked about this or posted something about it in Discord. It's just relating to Circle. A lot of you know that I'm interested in trying to get in on Circle, but when the IPO launched, it absolutely skyrocketed from, I think it was like $60 to $300. So classic IPO pump and dump. Well, today they published their first earnings, quarterly earnings. And interestingly, the quarterly earnings netted a loss of around about $500 million. So I think in Q4 2024, it was 33 million loss. Now we're nearly 500 million. Now they've sort of said that was because of the expenses related to the IPO. And sort of, so they tried to sort of calm that off. But I just want to sort of remind anyone, it's not just about Circle, it's anyone that's sort of looking generally at getting in IPOs. So I've put this in on the 5-minute time frame just because I wanted to show you. So this was close of yesterday, and then on open, so the earnings report came out at opening. On open, this thing gapped up to 186, but went all the way up to $190 before sort of coming back down. But there's a big gap there. You know what I'm going to say, gaps love to be filled. And well, the news wasn't great. So there was some anticipation in the aftermarkets yesterday that the news was going to be good. So people were putting in their orders beforehand, which is why on opening, market shot straight up. But as we can actually see, what immediately happened over time is that gap is already filled today. And we're kind of back down at $166. When you look at it on the daily time frame, you can kind of really see just how far we've fallen. If I put it on the linear chart, we'll get a better feel for that. But, you know, we're starting to look like a classic IPO, massive move up on the hype. You know, those that got the free tokens or the free shares, selling it out, second bit of hype, thinking, right, we've got to the bottom, let's go. Another sellout, and then we start to crash back down. And we're going to find its fair market value at some stage. This is just the same with every IPO. People were talking about this IPO was going to be different, but I just held off because they always seem to be the same. As I've said before, I will likely wait until we see a bear market to see where this really finds its true value when there's no interest in crypto. And I do think stablecoins are going to have a huge implication going forward. I actually think, going back to that previous article about where, you know, why the government is falling behind, the fact that we're doing nothing about stablecoins and the ability that they may have to help economies and using digital currency, etc. I'm not necessarily promoting one individual project. I'm more talking about just the whole idea of what cryptocurrency is almost ludicrous. But there we go. So even something with as much hype as Circle did still continue to fall. And it's always worth just like, you know, keeping an eye on earnings reports and just, you know, sorry if I'm teaching you to suck eggs here, but if you've got things set up on TradingView correctly, you know, it's just a little indicator down here. It's E for earnings. You can just have a look at it and gives you a snapshot of sort of where it was and sort of where we sat. And then, you know, you'll get other letters as well. I think the other one is S in case someone does a stock split. I know Tesla have done a few of those. So anyway, that is that. Today, then, we got CPI data, and a lot of the news coming into today, well, not news, a lot of the rumor mill, shall we say, was that actually CPI data was going to come in hot. I'll come back to you on that one in a second about vector candles. Was going to come in hot. So we were, although it was previously set at 2.7, so it's where we're looking. 2.7 was the previous. The forecast to be 2.8. People think it was going to come in even hotter than that, around about 3%. So it was a bit of a surprise that it actually came in at 2.7, which everyone's like, oh, it's actually down. Well, it's not. It's the same as where we were but it was better than forecast. So that gives the market an opportunity to, let's just get rid of that, to move positively from that one. Now, again, core CPI actually was up, but it was in line with what was forecast, and CPI month on month was down, but again, in line with what was on forecast. So generally, we sort of met many expectations. And what I was kind of looking at and what I was tracking was where we were going with the rate cuts, because obviously FOMC was a couple of weeks ago. We're really waiting for the data before we know where September is going to be, and CPI is one of those. And, Powell's kind of sort of backing himself into a corner of that 2% mandate, and he's been pretty stubborn about it. But what we've seen is, when last week, so I'm down at the bottom here, 93% chance that we were going to have a 25% rate cut, sorry, 25 basis points, 0.25%. And then, during the last week, because people have been speculating that CPI was going to come in hotter than anticipated, that started to drop off. And a couple of hours or an hour or so before CPI data came out, I just took this screenshot, 82.4%, which is still pretty high, but, down almost 10% from where we were a week ago. And I think at one stage, this was actually stood at 98%. But the data then comes out, and where do we find ourselves? Back up at 94.2%. So again, the market seems pretty excited about that. Obviously, that's going to mean less of a interest rate for savers. People maybe pull from the savers and just risk back on going into the stock market. The rally continues. I'll show you later, but the Nasdaq and the S&P both made new all-time highs today after the release of the CPI data, pricing in what everyone is now going to assume that we are going to see that rate cut in September of this year. I just want to, that's great. We need to start seeing more rate cuts again. But for those of you that do go to the cuddles or you watch the cuddle videos, you'll have seen a couple of cuddles ago, I talked about sort of, where we sit with rate cuts. And we need rate cuts. Of course we do, because what we want is we want to get from a quantitative tightening kind of environment and protocol to a quantitative easing. We want the money printers to effectively turn back on. So the charts that you're looking at the moment, it's the S&P on the monthly time frame. The purple line down here is interest rates, and then sort of the pink line, I suppose, should have chosen a better color, is, for one in better term, it's the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. So, assets that they hold on their balance sheet. When we're in periods of QE, this goes up, QT, it goes down, simply put. But what we can actually see is, yes, we want a rate cut to happen. But if we look back, and you might not be able to see because my camera will be in the way, but if we look back, there's actually two criteria we need. It was three really, but I'll try and say it down to two, that we really need to see the stock markets and then other risk on assets like crypto really move. So one, we do need rates to cut. So when we go back 2007, 2008, we had rates at 5%, and then we started to see those fall away. But you'll also note the market still fell away as well. It wasn't enough just to have rate cuts for the market to turn around. We needed two other factors. We needed the cutting to cease, so we get a flat line down here, if you can see that. And then the other thing we need is we need the money printers to turn on. Now, you could argue that money printers may not turn on until the rates have cut, but actually, historically, money printers normally do turn on significantly prior to the leveling out of rate cuts. So we need, stabilization in the interest rates after a sustained period of falling, and we need the money printers to have been turned on. That was similar in 2020, and you could argue that the China virus, don't know why I have to say it like that now, it's just because I think of Donald Trump every time. We had the money printer turned on because we were going, actually this is in 2019, so it's been a little bit earlier there. Let me just get rid of some of these, it's going to be confusing otherwise. We had interest rates dropping down, but as we said, it wasn't until they flatlined down at the bottom and the money printer was on, and okay, it went on, then that we actually saw the market increase. And this time it did increase. It was just steady over a decade or so. So we moved to where we are now. Let's just get rid of all of these, 'cause we'll leave them on, you guys can see it. And what have we got? We've started with rate cuts, but we've already actually had a few rate cuts. And yes, we have seen the markets generally continue to trend upwards, although there has been some spikes down. But look, we are still in QT. We are still losing Federal Reserve balance sheets, or the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve is still decreasing. So we're not quite there yet. Plus, actually, in both these previous instances, the interest rate was sub 1. It was actually 0.25. We're talking about maybe just moving down to 4, probably 4.25 to 4. Maybe we get a 50% or 50 basis points rate cut. But it doesn't feel like we're mission accomplished with this. It feels like actually we've probably got 6 more months, maybe more, of interest rates being cutting until we get down to this golden level. And then we'll see whether or not this is curved round and we've got time to go. Okay, I've just realized the scale at the bottom there. I've crossed it over 2 years. But you get the point I'm trying to make there. But yes, it's good that we've seen that rate cuts are happening. And it is, for a day at least, a very positive thing. People can get behind that and we can start to sell, articles and newspaper lines or whatever term you want to use to try and get the market excited. But when you actually go back and look at the data historically, it's probably likely that the sentiment just off the rate cuts and the CPI data is going to cool off relatively quickly, because it doesn't feel like this job has finished yet, and we've got a long way to go with rate cuts. And if they're going to be pretty slow about cutting the rates to try and make sure that inflation doesn't creep up, then this could take, it only happen 8 times a year, unless you hold an emergency one. We could be talking, the best part of another 12 months before we see that happen. Now, that could blow out things like the 4-year cycle, or what it could actually happen is 12 months time, we get through now with the see our bull peak in the end of this year, then we have a 12 months worth of decline. Interest rates through that start leveling off, there's some selling, profit taking, whatever you want to call it, and then we get to the bottom of the level back end of 2026, which is where we'd historically see sort of the markets turning around for Bitcoin in the 4-year cycle, and then we start to make that move back up. So there's definitely an argument that we have for both of those. Anyway, I'll leave that there because there's still plenty of positive things to talk about, and at least the data is suggesting that actually Powell may not be able to hide behind just 1 more month worth of data. We may be forcing him to make that decision. I do believe that the 17th of September, if we do get a rate cut, we're definitely going to see that spiking off. There's just going to be it's almost like the popping of a champagne cork. I think there's just going to be such a level of jubilance from that. The cooler heads will prevail probably in the days following. But we'll talk about it when we get closer to the time. All right, let's have a look at Bitcoin and its price before we move to talk about Ethereum and whether or not we're in the ETHgame now. So, as we said last week, Friday, expecting Bitcoin. Now, at the time when we were talking on Friday, where were we? I need to find it here. We were kind of midway between these two zones, and I couldn't really tell you which way it was going to go. But I was like, we just need to get past that point of control. If we get past the point of control, we're going to move up. And actually, what happened, we did break that point of control at 118,000. And then we moved into this vector zone here. Now, we didn't fully just take it out, but we took the vast majority. We got all the way up to 122,300 yesterday morning. And now we've started to see it come back down. So when we actually look at this here, this is now where the new liquidation heat maps zones are. So you can see we've eaten up that previous one. Let me just get rid of these for a second. Don't need them on. And we've now formed one from effectively where we topped, because it was still remaining, 122,300 to a new all-time high of 124,000. Remember, this is above price. This is where the short liquidations are. And we're starting to form a new one. It's relatively new, but it's getting pretty yellow on the, well, it's not quite yellow yet, but it's starting to turn the shade of yellow when you go on CoinAnk and look at the heat map, in around about 114,300 to 115,000. So again, we kind of sat in between that. But for me, the fact that we are above that previous point of control, I'm going to throw it on here for you. I apologize now because it's going to look very messy. But if we go back to say here and here, this is here, 118,000. That's the point of control. It's where we came back to for the last couple of candles as well. We've managed to find some support from it. So all these buys and sells in and around there, it's kind of effectively the quasi support of this entire ranging pattern. So all we've really done is dip down and we come back into that range, but with the right side of it. So until we lose that, I'm suggesting that we're probably going to be just building up momentum to actually try and take that all-time high of 124,000. Get this off just for now. Anything else on here to look at? Not really. We're miles away from some of the fibs. We're obviously miles away from the multi-year support resistance trend line. So right now, just looking at this, we can see the range that we're building within here. And then we've got the vector zones that we can go, sorry, the liquidation zones we can go either side. We're going to have to go onto the lower time frames to have a look at vector counts and EMAs to just try and determine which the probability of which direction Bitcoin is going to go next. ETFs, I mean, we're still seeing inflows. Maybe they are drying up. I say drying up. We're still, some days are $400 million worth. Other days, just a measly $91 million worth. But we are still getting in inflows. We had a couple of days worth of selling at the beginning of the month. But other than that, the money is still flowing in. And BlackRock is just about to tip over to $58 billion worth of ETF acquisitions, which is, unbelievable. I don't have the chart for how much they have. I don't know if this tells me it. No, it doesn't. Anyway, we'll leave that there. You know where to look for it. But I want to look at Ethereum because this is, this is starting to move towards that discussion, which we have kind of had over the last couple of weeks. And the ETFs have massively woken up. I mean, we were looking back 3 weeks worth now, and we are seeing figures on here that rival Bitcoin's interest over that same period of ETFs. Matter of fact, yesterday we had $1 billion total, was $1 billion worth of Ethereum bought under the ETF. First time it's ever happened that. And for something that took 12, 15 months of just lagging behind, I wouldn't say it was a laughing stock, but just nothing really happening with the Ethereum ETF. We have now seen that, over the past 2 months, it's really started to be utilized as an asset for institutional investment. I don't know whether it's because, the investor sides that are buying into the shares of it are just seeing that the Bitcoin ETFs are too expensive and they want to take that risk on something that is, the share price itself is not as significant right now, and to try and make some gains from that. Leave that to another person to investigate. But the reality of it is that as we're still seeing numbers like this, and I think any triple digit day that we see for Ethereum has got to go down as a golden letter day. And as long as we continue to have those, then Ethereum will sort of, in my humble opinion, we'll see that sustained kind of growth that Bitcoin has over the last 18 months. Does it mean that we're not going to get dips? Of course. Does it mean we're not going to get days got the word now. Multiple days in a row. Don't know why I can't think of it. Of sells, that happened in Bitcoin as well. But just generally plotting it out on the chart, as long as we've got solid inflows like this, and we know private companies are pushing Ethereum to hold on their books as well, then I think it's going to get a very similar treatment to what Bitcoin has experienced over the last 18 months. Then we get to have a look at Ethereum's price, and this is kind of the crux of where things are, where we sit right now, because for the best part of 3 years, we battled that $4,100 level. What this white line is symbolizing here. And that was the question beginning of last week. Can we break through that 4,000 level? And I actually think it was the weekend that we broke it. Saturday, yeah, it was. So even on Friday's call, we were like, this is it. We need to see if we can break that. It was Saturday we did it, and we wanted to break it and hold it. Now, breaking it on the weekend, I think, is no real achievement because anything can happen. But to be fair, Monday, markets opened. Yes, we had a pullback, but we still managed to stick the landing. Today, we're really starting to make that move up. And if you think that the daily close of the all-time high is 4,613, I think, with a spike at 4,800, the betting person here would suggest that we're probably going for the all-time high. Now, when we get to the all-time high, psychologically, I think you just got to be prepared for yourself for a bit of a pullback. But let's not, sort of rule out where this was. 3 months ago, it's $1,400. This is where I was laughing at it and going, it's just a failed asset this cycle. And even when it was ranging through May and June, it was getting decimated by other altcoins. But since end of June, beginning of July, we've really seen that stark reversal from that, and it's making its move through. So, without any indicators on here, why? Oh, that's because I'm not on the weekly. That's why. We can kind of see, look at the targets that it's got to go for it. And now the question is whether or not, after 4,100 was such a strong level of resistance, can it be that level of support for us? Because the one thing we haven't had is that level hold. When we burst through it here back in May 21, we lost it within a week. And then when we came up here, we lost it within 6 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see. We will get a retest of it. We're going to at some stage, whether or not we can hold it. But I have a long going on Ethereum at the moment. That's the level of confidence I have with where Ethereum is going. I actually do have a take profit zone at the all-time high, because I just think we're probably going to see some shenanigans from that. If we have a look at ETH BTC, and we can kind of see a very similar story. Ignore the white support resistance line at the moment, trend line at the moment, and we just have a look. Off the base in April, it's come back through, and we've had this strong move against BTC, which is reflected in the price. You don't need to be good at maths to know Bitcoin was at 75,000 back in April. Ethereum was at 1,400. Ethereum is 3x that. Well, Bitcoin ain't at 210,000 right now. So we can already do, just with very simple maths, that actually Ethereum has been the asset to be in of the majors for the last few months. But this is where I just sort of have to put my don't get carried away with the hype hat on, because I've missed the move. I didn't get into Ethereum at 0.02. I didn't convert my Bitcoin then, and I missed the move. And I think I told you all, I was in Portugal this exact week. Then we've ranged and we've gone again. And I've got to the point now where I'm like, well, wait a second. I've already shown you where Bitcoin dominance's line is. It's right on that 60%. So I'm not really wanting to make that conversion yet. And on the ETH BTC, and that's, if we're going to go through this cycle of Bitcoin to Ethereum to large caps to alts, for this Bitcoin that I'm willing to convert, I want to follow this path. I want to move it into Ethereum. And so I'm like, well, I'm just at the end of a multi-year trend line for Ethereum, a resistance line for Ethereum BTC. Now does not feel like the right time for me to convert. So I want to do it. I think the momentum, certainly the sentiment, does seem to have shifted. That's what my heart is telling me. My brain is saying, Harry, just wait until we cross and hold this line. It's not that much of a difference, and we will still get a good move from this afterwards. So I am just holding on the horses there. I'm just trying to go back to you look at 2021, especially sort of after, this is March. So we came down as Bitcoin made its all-time high at 64,000. Then Bitcoin dumped hard down to 30,000. Ethereum didn't go as far. And you can just see how much it rallied. It went from a similar, actually less than we are now, 0.03, all the way up to 0.07. So these moves can happen. It can happen very suddenly. Of course, we're talking in the regions there of Bitcoin Ethereum getting to $8,000-9,000 if to achieve that move, assuming that it Bitcoin moves up as well. But I'm just going to wait and hold, and I've got a little bit of Bitcoin that I'd be willing to convert just to try and take advantage of that move, and then we'll get to see whether or not we get to move it into the large caps. And for that, we can have a look at this. So I showed you this chart a couple of weeks ago, and let me take a sip of water. So this is the total chart taking away USDT against Ethereum. So this is effectively altcoins versus Ethereum. And if the chart is moving down, just to simplify it, it means that Ethereum is outperforming the rest of the altcoin market. And what we can see is that's what's happened. Since April, Ethereum has absolutely trounced the vast majority of the altcoins there, and as a whole, the altcoin market. And it's quite a significant sell-off there. And we've seen this happen before, through 2020 and into the very beginning of 2021. Ethereum just decimated the altcoin market. we had that turnaround in sort of January, and suddenly altcoins woke up, and there was quite a lot of excitement and hype. Stim checks. There was the whole Wall Street bets, and just going for smaller cap things just to stick it to the man. And we saw altcoins have a real rally, not just against Ethereum, but actually against Bitcoin. And so I would expect at some stage a similar thing. I don't know what the narrative will be to change that, but when we move into phase 3, don't think that we're not going to get that. So for those of you that are holding alts or are now in Ethereum looking to convert it, just wait to see where it happens. And again, what we normally would see is sort of it do okay, and then for the rest of the cycle it just range out, because Ethereum and altcoins, they're just struggling against BTC overall, but they're kind of on par with each other. But this cycle has been different, and I stand by. I rightly gave Ethereum crap for months, because altcoins actually back end of last year and into this first part of this year massively outperformed Ethereum, because we know Ethereum did nothing whilst a lot of altcoins actually rallied hard. And so that did actually break the norm. Normally we see that happen after the effect and not now. So whatever reason, whether price was being suppressed for Ethereum so that people could get their buys in, or it was just a completely different cycle and we're looking at the data wrong, whatever, we can see that actually something was slightly different now. But we are returning to normality, and this is normal. For cycles, we see these again strong moves down where Ethereum overtakes and then altcoins go back. So don't think it doesn't happen that way. We just got to be patient with where we are. But I am certainly getting much closer to believing that phase 2 is a thing. Obviously, I need Bitcoin dominance line, which I haven't drawn on here, but that's a break. Which the line I've just drawn now does look like it's broken, but you remember the one that I did previously. I'm just trying to see if there was something else, another chart I wanted to have a look at on here, and I don't think there was. I thought I'd lined another up, but obviously I did not. But yeah, I think we are getting close to that ETHgame now, and then that all makes sense with the narrative of the 4-year cycle still being in play. With we are potentially within the last 3 or 4 months of this cycle. It's August. Cycles normally November, December they break. So we've only got 3 or 4 months left. We know when alt seasons happen, they burn bright and they burn fast. Ethereum is leading the way. Everything is lining up to suggest that actually a lot of this information a lot of this scenario is playing out exactly as we've seen it before. And so if that's the case, there's no reason to suggest that this won't happen this way. So if you're already in your alt positions, then fine, don't bother converting back to ETH now, just go back later. But if you're like me and have some Bitcoin that you're willing to risk, there actually may be a potential gain to have here to increase your BTC holding. If you're then even riskier, to then take your ETH into the large caps and then really risky there. And then what do you do here? You go back to the Bitcoin. You can't see any of that because of everything's the same color. I apologize, but yeah, and that's just how you build your Bitcoin. Simples, isn't it? If only it was that easy. Okay, let's just get into some other charting, shall we? I mean, we're rattling through it, but we might as well. I'll just cover Dude Soprano's comment just on circle and vector candles. So this is on the daily at the moment. We don't have that much data because it's only 5th of June it launched. So, we really don't. We are seeing some daily vector candles, but, like all vectors, these ones have all been recovered. This has been recovered. We've got one vector zone here because we're on the way down, and this one looks like it's going to end as a vector candle. But we probably need a little bit more. We go down some lower time frames, and yes, we're going to see some. But again, most of the vectors have been recovered, and we're just left with this one here and this one here. This isn't a vector candle. This is just a gap. Don't know why it's on there. But anyway, so kind of similar position, really. But I think we just need, unfortunately, more data for that. Okay, let's have a look at Bitcoin. So this is the range that we're in, and interestingly, both of these candles here, both high tests. I mean, there was some strong selling at that 122 level. They both turned into vector candles, and they've both got incredibly long wicks. So it does seem that, you know, there was some interest in selling here, interest in profit taking here. And as I said a little bit earlier on, for me, even on the daily, I need to see us recover this at least. And ideally, really, this, you know, because the worry otherwise is it's going to end up being some sort of M formation on the daily time frame with two clear tops to it. And you just think, well, by the time this plays out, we fall into September, are we then talking about a busted cycle? I just don't want that to happen. So, you know, I'm happy for us to keep ranging for a bit. That's fine. But at some stage, I want to see this happen here. I do not want us to be losing that 112 level without creating a new all-time high. We create a new all-time high and come back down here, fine. It's just a bit of a pullback. We start to actually end up all the way back down here without doing that. And I just think, have the buyers given up? Are we now just in profit taking mode and the sellers are taking over? Let's go down to the 4 hour. Okay, so let me just get this. I don't know where to draw this. I know it's not going to take up everything, but you kind of get the picture of that range I was talking about. So the most of the action, I know a few candles have gone in between, but most of the candles are within that range, which we are currently in. And the good thing is, when we did break down from it, we formed a beautiful double bottom and we just came back up. And then we just ended up back in this range again. We've got vectors that we can attack. We know we like to attack those. And maybe just a bit of sideways chop is what we need. This vector candle here has already been recovered, as have these vectors. So we don't really have any vectors on the 4 hour time frame to the north for us to target towards. Doesn't mean that we're not going to try for that move. But, you know, again, looking at EMAs, we're the right side of everything. The 10, the 20, the 50, the 200, even the 800. We're all the right side of those. We have been back to the 50 EMA relatively recently. And so it kind of makes sense that, you know, we have the strength, the momentum. We shouldn't be necessarily too tired for a move up. And if you want to really start to, you know, throw some stuff on there, maybe it's from this one. We have a look, you know, you can't see it. The 618 is where we range down here. We talked about that before. It's right on the bottom of this line here. We've come bursting back through, made obviously our top mark. We come back down to 382 and we bounce from that with a vector candle. You know, it's all looking relatively positive for me with where things are going. That green vector candle there is coordinated with the CPI data, I accept. But for starters, it's generally good news from that. I did have a look at trying to take some Bitcoin trades. Nothing really appealed to me, just because we're not in sort of all-time high or territory. We've got a bit, you know, noise there to ourselves, and we sort of come back down, which is why I didn't bother taking any. But it's still just, you know, tracking up from this low, you know, just moving up quite nicely, snaking up. Actually went all the way this way, coming back down. Yeah, it'd be a very healthy, you know, classically drawn sort of chart pattern that you'd want to see in an asset moving up. And that's what it's doing right now. And until that breaks, I think we've just got to assume that that's where we're going. Where do I think we could end up going back down to? Look, we start losing 118, that point of control. Obviously, there's some questions we have there. But realistically, by the time we get down to this base level, 200 EMA is going to be back in play. We'll have taken out those vector candles. We just want to make sure we hold the 116, 100, let's call it, because it's not exactly drawn. This sort of level down here. We'll keep that. And it's fine. Okay, we wipe out some of these. Well, if we're going to range, we know that's what happened. But we just want to keep this as our baseline. And we do that, and I think we can all be pretty happy with where we're positioning ourselves. Let's move on to BitTensor. So, BitTensor. I'm trying to just phrase this correctly, because I don't have the excitement for BitTensor's price action that I have for some of the other altcoins at the moment, or for Bitcoin. And that's because we are stuck in, we're stuck in a range, which we've been in, which is fine to be stuck in a range, but where others like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Link are sort of challenging all-time highs, we're nowhere near our all-time high. We're just stuck in this range. And there is opportunity, as I mentioned at the beginning, for money to be made within this if you are confident enough to trade it. But right now, we're just, you know, we had a big red candle down. I'm liking that today's candles are pretty much an engulfing candle. It'd be great if that candle turned green or blue. I'll take it. But you know, yesterday not looking good, busting through that 50, 200, 10 and 20 EMA in one candle, but we've recovered it all today. And that probably just sort of shows the level of confusion there is in and around BitTensor price action at the moment, because all of those EMAs are effectively within a $6 band. That's confusing on the daily time frame to really kind of get some direction from that. We can keep it one day, we lose it the next. And so, you know, we're a bit lost. This is just from sort of vectors that I was looking on lower time frames. We'll come back to. But what we can say, you know, don't be hasty. Is we've had that double bottom. We've moved up past the 50 EMA on the daily. We're coming back down for a retest. Maybe we're just lining ourselves up for that next move up. We're still above the Gandalf line, but as I mentioned, I mean, this 152 is more. If we don't clear it, I'm going to do that big side step which I talked about. But it's this 480 level we really want to be looking to clear, so we can take out that noise there and start to talk it. And until we get above that, I'm just sort of sat on my hands with BitTensor. I will take side steps where I see the opportunity. I'll try not to be too greedy in getting back in, but I'm not going to get overly excited with the price action until we start to see a break off that. And that's just, you know, how I am now. Just battle weary with altcoins for as long as we have been. Also, I didn't go onto a lower time frame. Let's just have a look on the 4 hour. Sorry, should have this on auto. So we've had, you know, we had this move up with the breakthrough, the 50 EMA on the right hand side of the W, couple of vector candles to get us through, come back down. You know, this is, I mean, do I like how steep it's come back down and rounded off? And not particularly 100%, you know, in favor with it, but it's not it's not like it's invalidated anything with this move down. We've come back down. Yeah, okay, we went slightly past the 50 EMA, but we've regained it with enough strength and we've got it there. Okay, we have left some vectors in our wake here and here, and we've still got that batch I was talking about up here. We know we'll take them. We don't leave them behind, so we're going to get them at some stage. But right now, we've got these to contend with. I think on the 4 hour, we may well, you know, who knows what tomorrow might bring with people sort of cooling off and realization where it is. Maybe we just come back down and take these. But as long as, if we do come back down and take this, as long as we can hold 357 and not create a new low there on the 4 hour, then we're okay. Worst case, absolute worst case, when we are starting to talk about invalidation now, if we take that, if we lose 445, let's call it, take this vector and we lose it, you know, we've really got to question if this was a genuine double bottom, and we're coming back in. So something to have a look at. Erjan's put about a double top on Tau Weekly. Let's have a look. Yeah, so weekly time frame, I see what you're saying. It's here and it's here, M formation. But this red candle did effectively come down to the Gandalf line. It missed it by $8, close enough, and we bounced from it. So whilst we can't say that it's invalidated that double top, we've done the best we possibly can. We came back down to the neckline and we bounced from it. And over the last couple of weeks, we are continuing to bounce. So obviously, we start coming back to the Gandalf line, we may have to revisit that conversation, but we can't really expect much more from BitTensor than what it did there. It came to do a double top. Buyers stepped in, went, no, we're going to buy back up from that level. It's a level we're happy to buy at, and we've continued to move up. I wasn't really aware it's there because I wasn't looking at this on the weekly, but now I see it. Yes, it's there still, but if anything, this might turn into a triple top. Or I'm just wondering if I can flip it and make some sort of inverted head and shoulders. Maybe on a lower time frame, there isn't it? There is a shout for an inverted head and shoulders. Maybe. Let's have a look. Okay, just bear with me here. See what we can do. Let's just clear everything. If I were to invert this, if I was to then put it on the daily, I was hoping I could do that as a shoulder, that as a head, this as a shoulder, but we kind of got a second shoulder going on here. A bit of Quasimodo with a bit of a bad back building on from it. So perhaps not. I was hoping that's a head and shoulders, but remember I've inverted it. I don't know. I might be just clutching at straws there. We'll have to wait and see. But even on the daily, what was I on? No. Oh no, damn it! It's above us. Yeah. So, am I inverted now? I am inverted. Okay, good. Yeah. So even on the daily, we've still got this 200 EMA. 315 right now, and it held strong last time down here, and it's only just printing. So. Okay, maybe the double top plays out slightly and we get down to that Gandalf line, but that Gandalf line is the 200 EMA. That's all I would say there. So keep watching it, but I can't have a problem with how it reacted to the neckline. Sorry, I feel like I got some stuff in my phone. Ethereum on some lower time frame. Let's have a look. So we talked about it on the daily. Oops, these are sort of levels. Oops. Okay, right. Before we move on, excited as it's been that we've got to the level we've got. Just look at how far we are away from EMAs. Okay, the 10, the 20, the 50, maybe not the 200 so much on the daily. Now I appreciate we hit them quite significantly back in June, but we are away, and this a snapback. Although it wouldn't be the end of the world, I'm sure it'll be treated as the end of the world. Bitcoin, it's like Ethereum falls $1,000 back to 3,400, but actually just hits the 50 EMA. Could be a great buying opportunity, but it's not going to feel like it at the time. It's going to feel like Eve's just chat the bed. But just remember, we are, and it's not just this. We'll look at Link later because it's a prime example. We are a hell of a distance away from that, and at some stage we're going to get called back. There's some stage we will. You know it. I know it. Just be careful with that. And my thought would be we make it to here and then we start that move back. We take an all-time high. The euphoria gets us that far. Then we start seeing some sellers. Going on to the lower time frames of the 4 hour, the 200 represents the 50 here. We can see we are. But look at some of these levels that I marked out previously. Now look at them with vector candles. They are vector candle zones here. So there's plenty of opportunity for us to mark back through. But what's interesting is these vector candles that we're talking about now, that we're running into, 4,500, 4,600, 4,800, we haven't touched those since it's going to take me a while to get there. Get there we will. Since the previous all-time high. So we're finally coming back to have a take of it. So where there was nothing for us to aim for on the daily time frame, actually on the 4 hour, we've got some nice targets here. They kind of line up with sort of areas that we're talking about anyway. Bloody hell, we really did go a long way. 4,600, the highest daily close, 4,800 and whatever it was, the all-time high. So there's certainly some things there. If we haven't, the problem with this is where do we draw a fib? Because we haven't finished this move up yet. So, it's like, how do we know? So let's just, this is a bit pie in the sky. Let me get rid of some of these lines. Let's just assume then that from the 200 EMA, we make it to the all-time high. Let's draw a fib there and see what lines up. So we make it to the all-time high. Maybe I need to draw a little bit more accurate because I think these lines there. I was kind of hoping some of these lines would fall quite nicely, but they do just sandwich these vector zones. So the 382 and the 0.5 do sandwich that quite nicely, lines up with the base there. We make this move up here, however we do it, get to here, we come back down, and by the time we get to the 382, I bet you there's 50 EMAs there. Could be a good turnaround point. But on a daily, still be looking at another $700 worth of falling to get there. So for me, I just think the momentum is in favor of Ethereum going up right now. That's my honest opinion. It had a nice little consolidation and it started to break out again. And we've seen this pattern play out on Bitcoin plenty of times. A lot of altcoins just builds up momentum within there and then it goes. And right now it does seem that Ethereum is the flavor of the month. Also noticing a compression on the daily. Is that on BitTensor? Are you thinking that and that somehow? I mean, maybe that. I'd prefer that to come down. If that was it. Okay, you could do it on the, if you did it on the linear, looks a little bit better. Yeah, definitely. Kind of symmetrical though, so could go either way. And this doesn't finish playing out probably till November. Then we're talking about different part of the story then, aren't we, really? Back to Ethereum. Okay. Let's just talk Link for a second. So again, Link has had one of those moves. It's actually had an even bigger explosive move than Ethereum has in terms of this month. I mean, this month we were at 15. We're now at, well, we got to 24. But just look where the 50 EMA is down here, $17. And it doesn't look like it's had any chill at the moment. I don't not really kept up with fundamentals as to what's driving this up. But we are talking about vector candle after vector candle after vector candle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of the last 6 daily candles have been green, not even blue, green vector candles. We're not seeing any exhaustion yet, but at some stage, someone's going to take some profit here. And these are going to look like almighty tasty targets. And I'm kind of like, do I just sell the rest of my Link now, knowing it's going to come back? And every part of me thinks I should. And then the other part's like, is it enough to warrant not necessarily the ball lake, because it'd be quick to do. But the Valhalla, let's just go for broke on it. I might do you all a favor and sell Link. Link is the one that I've got wrong every single time in the cycle. So I might sell it and then you guys can watch it go all the way to 50. If I do sell it, just put a long in against me. But yeah, it's just moved, staggeringly up. And I'm not necessarily sure as to why, but you look at down here, back to the 800 EMA, nice little sort of bottoming pattern there, and then move up, consolidate, and today is what's taking it. But I just feel that it needs to come back down. Certainly on the daily it does. And actually, when you zoom out and you kind of look at it and you go, I'll tell you what, let me just get rid of some stuff right now. Should have just done this on the clean chart. Yeah, we have these large moves up. They do happen with Link. And every time they do, they're met with this. So part of me thinks at some stage that's going to have to happen. It's happened every other time. It's just trying to get the right balance of it. And for those of you that remember when I tried to be cocky at $8, thinking we're getting back into that range or wherever it was down here, and it shot off. One of the banes of my this cycle's experience. But yeah, that's certainly something to consider there. I'm conscious of the time. It's 9 o'clock already. What else do I want to talk about? Going through some of these. XRP. So, strong move up back to the 50 EMA. This is what Ethereum and Link needs to do. And strong move up back to 50 EMA, build off again. And when this happened and we lost it, there were people laughing at the XRP guys because we came back down. But look, it just hit the 50 EMA and we've started to be able to build back to challenge that new all-time high. So, Link's on the precipice of a new all-time high. Ethereum's on the precipice of a new all-time high. Both of them massively extended against the 50 EMA. Look at what XRP did. Is this the actual forecast of what's going to happen for both Link and Ethereum? Who knows? But don't be surprised that this might happen. And like I say, assuming we're still in a bull market when Link and Ethereum get back to the 50 EMA, don't think it's over, okay? Don't think that's it, we're going down. Unless other indicators have told us otherwise, could be a great call to get back into. So just bear that in mind for those. Anything else really to go through? Not sure. There's one thing I was going to talk about. Smart money, dumb money, confidence. This on the S&P, just because I mentioned that I was going to sort of show you the all-time highs. So this was the all-time high. Yet we made it today. We just done it there. Nasdaq similar all-time high. These guys didn't get back to the 50 EMA, but they came within the cloud, and then they've just moved back up and continuing. we don't really talk about the smart money, dumb money confidence that often anymore, mainly because the indicator I used to use, I don't pay for anymore. So I don't really flash it up. But when we're looking down on this bottom thing, so we've got the red and the blue line, which is charting smart money and dumb money. So dumb money is the red line, smart money is the blue line. Blue line is pretty much right down at the bottom. What that typically means is the smart money is going to get ready to sell because dumb money is so excited with where things are going, they don't think that the top's going to be in. But actually, we know smart money sells at the top to take profit. And so when we get down to stuff, there's still a little bit more to go. We can still get down into the 0.2s. We're only at 0.3 now. But at some stage, we're probably going to see that actually smart money is going to sell. And you can kind of see when you link it up here that it's hard, I guess, put it above. But when smart money, look, smart money at the bottom there is at a high, it starts to move up, the blue line starts to move up, and we see that this drops down because they sell into it. So just bear that in mind. Similarly in 2020, that happened. The markets fell away, smart money sold into it. So we could be close to seeing that, and that's probably going to have a knock-on effect with the rest of the risk-on markets, cryptocurrency included. Right, I think I am going to just call it there because it's already 9 o'clock. What I would say to everyone, if I can get the right button pressed, is look, if we are seeing that alt season, I've talked about this a couple of times, we're at a point where it's going to be great to look at your portfolios, and we're going to just think it's going. I just implore everybody to just be grounded, okay? Don't be like the 70% of everyone that invests in this asset that lose money. Just be grounded when it starts to move up. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy it, doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but just remember that at some stage it's not real unless we actually take some profit on it. But it does look like we're starting to see that genuine shift from there. And if this is going to be the part of the alt season as a bull season, and you've not experienced it before, it's unbelievable. It's great. It's really enjoyable to see. And there's still plenty of gains to be had. So don't feel you've missed out on anything just yet with where you're going. There will be a trading pub on Thursday at 1 p.m. I will also do a charting on Friday. I will continue to do the Tuesday calls for the next couple of weeks, but I probably won't do the Friday calls because I am away. But I can't ever switch off. How can you at a time like this? So might as well talk about it whilst I'm away. If you have any questions, obviously hit me up in Discord. Again, anyone wants me to go into any depth about something, give me 24 hours notice by either tagging me in Discord with your question or putting it on the question sheet, and I'll spend a bit of time diving into it and giving you my thoughts on it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will speak to you all soon. Cheers now.